survival of our species. And there's another expression, isn't there? Fight or flight. Well, we've got to fight because there's nowhere to fly to. Now, the planet was here long before we arrived, and it will be here for a long time after we've gone. To put things into perspective, if you condense the time period that's passed since the Earth was first formed, about 4.54 billion years ago, into something we recognise, a 12-month period. Each 24-hour period within that year would represent 12.44 million years of Earth time. An hour equates to over to 518,264 years. Most of human history, which is about 8,000 years, would equate to a minute. And in 1 second, 114.3 years passed by. So looking at the calendar, starting in January, not a lot happened. The Jurassic period, in fact, which is, a period in history that we can all not so much remember, about when the dinosaurs started on the 16th of December. And T-Rex arrived and left Boxing Day. Lucy arrived in Ethiopia at about 10 minutes to 6 on New Year's Eve morning. Fire was mastered by humans. It's about 20 past 8 that evening. And Neanderthals arrived at about 11:15. Homo sapiens moved in at 11:36 p.m. 10 minutes later, the last glacial period began. By 2 minutes to midnight, the Neanderthals left, and only humans like us remained. In the final few seconds of the year, humankind has managed to trash the planet. Atmospheric carbon dioxide levels have shot through the roof. 80% of mammals have died out. 50% of plants have gone. 15% of fish. So, we have rapidly triggered what we now believe to be the 6th and biggest ever mass extinction event in the Earth's history. Welcome to the new year. The latest estimates suggest that we're wiping out 200 species every day. That's it's somewhere between 1,000 and 10,000 times faster than it should be. So I was also listening to Greta's talks yesterday, and I've actually got plaits in my hair. It's a marvellous thanks, Greta. So Greta says, what we do or don't do right now will affect my entire life and the lives of my children and grandchildren. Me and my generation won't be able to undo what's being done now in the future. Now, Greta was born the same year as my daughter in 2003, so she'll be 75 in 2078. In one of her speeches, she referred to this. She wrote, I wonder for my 75th birthday if my children will be there, my grandchildren will come along. And I wonder if they'll ask me why we didn't do anything. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, we've got less than 10 years to put things right.
Right, well, you're on the phone, yeah.
Otherwise,
Getting my live set up, yeah.
How are you?
So we are
Good, man, good.
Good to see you. Oh, a bit trammy here, isn't it? A bit trammy.
Yeah.
But we're still
I was here earlier, but they were all playing copyrighted music. I couldn't sort of shit. They did that 10 4-second clips. So that's March. That's second. I don't.
Yet our governments, other world leaders, aren't quite getting the message. And to a large extent, they are continuing along their business as usual course. But we don't have any time left. It's code red for humanity. We can't afford any more fake or broken promises. We need more ambitious targets to be set in stone and to be met, or better still, exceeded. Despite these warnings, many leaders across the globe
Only half an hour late.
right? Talk after their people. At Unison, we have members on the front line when it comes to dealing with the effects of climate change already. They don't work for local authorities, places like that.
My nickname for him is
Unison's, well, all unions really, are constantly fighting crisis after crisis. Certainly over the last 10 years or so, they have been. They're fighting for better terms and conditions. They're fighting on health and safety issues. Most recently, the fight for PPE. We will need to continue to do this. But we also
oh yeah, the recent one that's been a lot of
to work with everyone as we transition to cleaner, greener jobs. A transition we must. There can no longer be any us there when it comes to climate change. Trade unions have always fought for a more equal world, a more just world. We're now faced with fighting for clean air, clean water, and not being forced to leave our homes due to climate disasters. We need to invest in skills and technology. We need green jobs. The government
Believe in me, 45
seems to be
years
going the wrong way.
we were campaigning for save our rivers and seas, stop pollution, clean our rivers and seas, save our whales and elephants, save our earth. Still here 50 years later. Yeah, man. When's it going to happen? You're not going to listen to these guys, are they?
They scrapped the Green Deal, which was all about insulating.
sorry for the shaky cam there, I was putting away my tripod. Getting ready to march in a minute.
Now unions are, well, not just ready, but we're willing to rise.
The stream might go down for a second, but if I see the trains drop, I'll be straight back out of the crowd. Just want to get some shots from inside the crowd.
excuse. Make it happen. Life is precious, and it's also far too short.
Thank you very much, Mary, for giving us perspective on time our society has unfortunately lost. But I think she's right. I think we've all done enough standing still, and it's time to do some marching. Now, looking down at you all, this reminds me of how we stopped fracking. Yeah, here in Manchester with a bit of help, but this is a city that has held the biggest, the two, or maybe the three biggest gatherings against fracking ever seen in this country, meaning that in the UK at least, this is one fossil fuel we will keep in the ground. So now that was the preliminary, now it's time to finish the job, and let's march to get some real action on climate justice. So we'll be leading off from down here, on my left, your right, following the samba band. Emma is positioned at the front with the big banner. No need to crowd, we've plenty of room in Manchester, and let's just go for a nice, fun, amiable amble through Manchester, perhaps making a little bit of noise as we go. Okay, Manchester, I will see you again when you're back here for the rest of the speakers. Have fun.
Yeah, they're playing copyrighted music. Please hit like, share it to any groups if you're on Facebook, share it out to other platforms if you're on YouTube. Alan, Turmo, yeah, Charlie's around. Charlie's doing his usual thing, walking around. Hello, Dawn. If you don't yet know, we're streaming on Facebook and YouTube today. So if you're watching on Facebook, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. If we ever get taken down again, I'll still be able to stream then. So at least one of the platforms. The links for both is in the description if you're not already following one of them. climate protest march saying that COP26 isn't going far enough, stuff like that. Sorry about the shaky cam then. I was putting a bag over my camera so it didn't get too wet. Food smells nice, aren't it?
by British multinationals, all in the drive for profit and to defend British capitalism and British imperialism. This is a system which is invented and promoted by both Tory and Labour parties.
Say it loud and say it clear!
Refugees are welcome here!
Say it loud and say it clear!
Refugees are welcome here!
Deadly heat wave, rising sea! Deadly heat wave,
Typical rain in Manchester.
refugees! Deadly heat wave, rising sea!
Cheers. I might have to put a bag over my phone soon as well, so the live stream might go a bit blurry if the rain carries on this bad. Yeah, sorry about the connection if it's bad. Like you say, Alan, the mobile connection in Manchester's awful, especially when it's raining. Pretty sure Tyrant already follows my channel. Well, maybe not this YouTube channel because it's pretty new, but feel free to email them, yeah. I try and keep everything I do unbiased, so. But yeah, my footage is free to use for our YouTubers below 150,000 subs. Oh, sorry, mate. Go on. Almost jumped on a bike then.
He went rising sea.
camera's going to go shaky, so I'm going to wipe the camera.
What do we want? What do we want? What do we want?
Climate justice. Now. Welcome back, everybody. The weather's suddenly got very Manchester, hasn't it? This is Barton Moss weather, isn't it? Who remembers that? Okay, well, we'll carry on with the rest of our speakers. And next up, we have Sarah Ensor from PCS Union.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Actually, before we have Sarah, we were hoping to have two MPs speaking today, but they've both got COVID. Victims of the Boris Johnson super spreading event in Parliament, it seems. But Afzal Khan sent this message, which I said we'll read. Good afternoon. I'm sorry I can't be with you at the rally today. I'm sadly isolating following a positive COVID-19 test. I applaud everyone for coming together today on this global day of action for climate justice. When the world came together in 2015 to set an historic ambition to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, we thought that progress had been made. But 6 years on, we are nowhere near meeting that target. And instead, we are fighting to keep the ambition alive. The conclusions of the IPCC report earlier this year were described by the UN Secretary General as Code Red for humanity. It is now clear we are in a state of crisis. Our world is now hotter than any time in the last 12,000 years. Over 1 million species are now threatened with extinction, and this year every corner of the COP26 must signal the final death knell for coal and fossil fuels to prevent the rise of global temperatures. The government could set an example for the world by ending oil and gas exploration in the UK and throwing their weight behind the shift to renewable energy. Action in this decade will be critical to preventing catastrophic climate breakdown. Yet we know the current pledges are not going to be enough to limit global temperature rises. Tackling the climate emergency can no longer be considered a problem for tomorrow. There is no more time for delay and no room for excuses. My constituents in Manchester, Gorton and across our great city care deeply for the future of our planet. All of us are desperate for world leaders to step up and act before it is too late. I hope they will hear your collective call for action today. In solidarity, Afzal Khan MP. And now Sarah Ensor from PCS Union.
Thanks very much. My name's Sarah. I'm on the National Executive Committee of the Public and Commercial Services Union, bringing you solidarity from tens of thousands of organised workers, public sector and outsourced workers in government agencies and civil service. PCS has a long and proud tradition of supporting action on the environment and climate change. And we are very clear that dealing with climate change is not just about the science and technology. We have to demand climate justice because climate change is a class issue. It disproportionately affects and is affecting the global south, but we also need climate justice in the UK. Environmental crisis affects the poorest, black and minority ethnic people and women hardest. The effects of pollution, poor housing and fuel poverty. PCS also supports workers' justice. That's why we support the 1 Million Climate Jobs campaign. Workers have to link up with social movements. That's why it was so brilliant to see yesterday the striking bin workers in Glasgow joining Greta Thunberg with 30,000 protesters in the streets there. Because if we're going to get climate justice, we have to put people before profit. And we need to fight racism and support the migrants and show solidarity with the people in the global south. We need complete economic transformation of our society. We need a national climate service set out in the 1 million climate jobs report. We need good climate jobs in renewable energy, insulating homes, mass public transport, public services. We need energy democracy based on public ownership and democratic control of energy. We need a tax system that makes the companies pay and stops them just avoiding and evading tax. Because we know the government's plan is to tackle climate change by greenwashing profits, and they want to make workers and ordinary people pay for the economic restructuring that's needed. And if we want to get climate justice, we need to take on the bosses and take on the fossil fuel companies, because they will always put profit before people. And we need a sustainable world and a sustainable economy organised in the interests of planet and people. So PCS Union is proud to march with our banner today, but the movement doesn't end today. We will be with you on the climate strikes and marches, and we hope you will bring solidarity and biscuits to our picket lines when we're on strike. Thank you, and solidarity.
That's very loud. We've now got Tandrima from City of Sanctuary to speak.
Hello everybody, and thank you for coming out here today to support the cause of climate justice. I'm Tandrima, and I represent the many men and women who are part of Women Asylum Seekers Together here in Manchester and the City of Sanctuary. Together we are part of Status Now Network, which is a network with over 140 organizations. We are all seeking safety and security, and we are all affected, directly or indirectly, by the environmental degradation, social collapse, poverty, and the rise of extremism. We are here because climate change causes refugees. Whether you come from Niger, where the soil blows away and loses its fertility, or Sudan, where sandstorms threaten both agricultural and urban land, or Zimbabwe, which was once the grain basket of Africa, but is now suffering droughts and famine. And it's not just Africa, of course. Rising sea levels are swamping the lowlands in Bangladesh, and salt water is polluting drinking and agricultural water. Every day we are seeing indigenous people in Brazil driven from their land by deforestation and forest land sold to rich builders with government contacts. Or maybe you're from the Middle East, where temperatures are soaring above 50 degrees. We need to ask, how can they expect people to survive when the land is infertile, when there is nothing to eat, nothing to drink? We know about the people trafficking, modern day slavery, prostitution that this causes. We know of villages in Zimbabwe where the children live with their grandparents because there is nothing there and the parents have moved elsewhere in search of jobs to feed the family. We know of areas in Niger where Al-Shabaab is recruiting from the desperate and terrorizing the local population who don't accept them. Take a look at Madagascar today. It's a small country with no contribution at all towards carbon emission, but is suffering appalling human tragedy. There is no food or water for its population, and the majority of their children are malnourished and facing early deaths. We know climate change causes refugees. The two issues are caught up together because no one wants to starve or watch their children starve. When the UK says it wants a greener world, why does it slash aid to environmental projects that would regenerate the land and help people stay in their homelands? Why does it deport people to places where they have no means to survive? Unless we change things on the ground, there will be more and more and more refugees. The UK is hosting COP26, claiming to bring in environmental change. But at the same time, exactly the same time, it has devised a bill which will criminalize asylum, that will criminalize desperate people trafficked into slavery because they cannot live where they are anymore. But these higher and higher walls won't stop desperate people trying to survive. We demand better action. We demand better action plans. We demand a timeline for when this will be implemented. We don't want any more empty promises that cushion the rich only. The time to act is now, or it will be too late. Ask those driven from lands made unlivable by climate change, by drought, fire, flood, violence. That is what faces all of us if this doesn't stop. We must demand justice for all refugees and status for all, for people displaced by climate change. We demand the abolishment of the proposed immigration bill that sees refugees as criminals. Today, I urge you all to stand together in solidarity with the refugee and asylum-seeking community and demand climate justice, because climate change destroys land, it destroys food, it destroys community, and it destroys peace for all of us. And climate change...
Thank you very much, Tandrima. I think when we were putting this rally together, we thought it was really important to hear the voices of those who have been most affected.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here today. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Save Rybank Fields campaign. And Rybank Fields is a beautifully, naturally rewilded urban green space in Chorlton that is currently threatened for development. It was a brickworks up until the 1920s, then it became an unlicensed tip, so it's full of toxic chemicals and gases that were dumped there. It was given by the council to Manchester Metropolitan University to use as sports playing fields in the 1970s, and they abandoned that in the 1990s, and since then it's an absolute textbook example of urban rewilding. It's hugely diverse. There are 1,400 trees, so it's a carbon sink. It helps the vast amount of pollution in the local area. There are over 65 bird species. There are hundreds of mammals that live there. It's a much needed green lung. If you take a drone up from Rybank Fields and take it into Manchester, you have this little spot of green, and then you have pure grey concrete until you get to the city centre here. There is a primary school right behind it whose children have come out to protest about the amount of air pollution and traffic congestion around there. It's a floodplain, so it helps to protect the local park and the local residents from floods into those people's houses. It's a very beloved community resource. There are hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people who use it to walk their dogs, to bring their children to play in a little bit of wilderness. And we know that wild areas that our children can play in have been reduced massively over the last few decades, and urban children don't have much access to wilderness, so it's incredibly important from that point of view. There are community picnics on it, there are history walks, there are women's night walks to reclaim the night so women can feel safe coming out and exploring in the darkness. There is an ancient earthwork that runs through it called the Nico Ditch. And Manchester Metropolitan University, who laughably claim to be the second greenest university in the UK, are going to flog it for profit. Not for social housing, for executive houses, which is the last thing that we need more of in Chorlton. So that's going to lead to more traffic, loss of biodiversity, the loss of our trees, the loss of the green space that the politicians are queuing up to tell us is so important to us. And we saw in lockdown that we need that green space for our physical health, we need it for our mental health. It's outrageous that they can make these green claims. And I recently went to Manchester Green Summit, for which Manchester and Metropolitan University were one of the main sponsors. And they sat up there on the stage and they told us that they are innovating use of green hydrogen, that they have trained over 1,500 people in carbon literacy. And I asked the man on stage, what's the point of training people in carbon literacy when the most basic understanding of the climate crisis will tell you you cannot tarmac over a floodplain, you cannot get rid of the little bit of remaining biodiversity that we have, you cannot chop down trees and claim to be green. It's like saying you're going on a diet and you've given up burgers but not mentioning that you've taken up ice cream instead. It's absolutely senseless. So we have a campaign called Friends of Rybank Fields that's been working really, really hard for 4 years to oppose development. We have over 2,000 people in the Facebook group, and the committee are pulling every lever possible to find and document all the rare species that live there, to find the planning consultations, to find any possible way that we can to object to it. In the Manchester City Council local plan in 2020, City Council are not listening. They are hand in hand with the developers, as they are in so many areas across Manchester. We've already managed to mobilise the local community, so they have tried to fence off Rybank Fields several times, and the local community came down and occupied it with our bodies and prevented them, and off they went. And that is the people power that we have. Besides that, we now have a protest community camp up on the fields, which has got activists from Extinction Rebellion and Animal Rebellion and other activist movements who are occupying the fields. So we have dwellings there, we have music events, we have art exhibitions, we have climate exhibitions. And we are saying to them that they are not going to take one blade of grass of those fields. They are our land, they do not have any moral right to it, and we're not going to let them take it. And it's not one blade of grass. And I would urge all of the many other campaigners, I know there are loads of people fighting for green space all over Manchester against the overdevelopment that the council seems to be quite happy to permit. This kind of community protest camp is amazing because you've got a community full of people who are concerned about the climate crisis, who want their children to have a future, and then you've got frontline activism going on, and it's bringing those two things closer together, because we can't control what happens in the Amazon, we can't control what happens across the globe. We absolutely can control our local green space and refuse to allow it to be taken from us, and refuse to allow those trees and that biodiversity and that wildlife to disappear. So I'm just going to leave it with a quote from the author Barbara Kingsolver, which really for me sums up how I feel about Rybank Fields and how I know so many people do as well. And I want to dedicate this to everyone who's fighting to preserve the green spaces that we need. She says, "This place is one of the blessings I count when I brace myself to consider a dearly beloved and threatened world and stake my heart onto pieces of what's left of it." So save Rybank Fields!
Thank you for that. I just wanted to let everyone know that this has been brought together today by so many amazing environmental groups, activists, unions, but it doesn't come cheap. So we've got some money buckets going around to help fund things like the infrastructure we've got today that have helped bring us all together. So if you can give anything at all to help fund that, please do. There's some dotted about everywhere. But as I said, this has brought together so many amazing different environmental groups because we're all fighting for the same thing. One person is Joel, who's here from XR to say a few words. Go away, Joel.
Thanks. How long should this... I never really ask how, like, two... Okay, cool. Yeah, hi. Thanks all so much for coming out today in, like, the mankest weather imaginable. Like, just as the march began, the rain comes. Like, thank you, Manchester. Yeah, I just want to share a very quick personal anecdote about an experience I had this last week and then say a couple of things. I was up at the lawful march down to the conference centre. Me and a couple of other people were then followed by police officers across Glasgow, a half-hour walk across Glasgow. We were then followed onto a train to Edinburgh, where we were going back to stay. On that train for 1 hour and 20, these police officers came with us. And then when we got to Edinburgh and asked them, what's going on, guys? They were weirdly cagey about it. And then they seemed to pass over the baton to some of their colleagues who were waiting for us in the station in Edinburgh, who continued to follow us around Edinburgh until we went and got a falafel, and then they finally fucked off. This is the level the British state will go to suppress and repress even the most mild forms of resistance and expression of outrage against the abject failure of the COP process. We all here know that the COP process, as it is not going to achieve anything. Yet again, we've got more empty promises. They're going to end deforestation. They said that 7 years ago. They did nothing. They said in Paris in 2015 they were going to do anything about emissions. They have done nothing. The economic paradigm we live within means they cannot do anything, because the economic beast that we live in is going to consume the world, and it has to do that. It has an imperative to do that. So unless we can build up the social power to fundamentally challenge that, COP will always be a failure. It will achieve as much as it achieved in the past 26 years, which is nothing. And does anyone really believe that we're going to get the change we need now without civil resistance? Without people in their tens of thousands taking to the streets and occupying everything and not going home until we force constitutional change to shift power away from the political class, away from the corporate class, to ordinary people who are actually invested in our own future? Do you really believe electoralism is going to fix this? Does anyone believe that? With the political situation we have in this country, we're going to vote our way out of this horror show? You don't believe that. You know that's not the case. It's going to take genuine civil resistance of the kind Exile has tried to model, but not really. It needs to be much more real. It needs to be much more rooted in communities. It's going to take industrial action. It's going to take general strikes. It's going to take a level of militancy. We can't quite yet imagine it in this country, but we're going to have to build towards it, because nothing less than that is going to do. So we've got our work cut out for us, everyone. So, you know, I know we're all exhausted. We all need a few years off, but unfortunately, the struggle goes on. It's got to intensify. The PCSC bill is going to go to its final reading in a few days' time. The police can already behave like they did, stalking, harassing, intimidating people, containing them, curtailing protests. They're going to get levels of power to control resistance and protest that we can't currently believe. There's a few people, and Insulate Britain, I have a lot of issues with them, but I can say that everyone involved in that campaign has a heart of fucking gold and is absolutely motivated by the right things and is more courageous than I will ever be. A lot of them are facing years in prison next week for breaking that injunction. And like whatever issues you might have with tactics, strategy, messaging, there's people out there fighting for our future, and they're going to keep fighting, and they're going to pay a heavy price. And we all need to step up more and more, because we can see what is coming, and the British state is getting ready for it with the PCSC bill. They are getting ready for civil unrest when the food starts to run out, when the fuel runs out. It's already happening. We're going to have to fight back even harder. So, I don't know, maybe Exiles has its day, but hopefully we've planted some seeds. And get down to Rybank Fields, because we need to be fighting on every front, defending every bit of green space with everything we've got. Come and visit the camp, even if it's just for an hour. Do what you can. Keep coming to these events. Talk to your family, because we are going to have to fight for our lives and for the lives of the people out there who are already dying by the thousands. We've got to step up. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Joel, from Extinction Rebellion. Next, we have Milena Villeneuve from Demilitarised Education.
Apparently the stage is really slippery, so bear with me as I try not to fall on my face. My name is Melina. I am from Demilitarised Education, and I'm here today to tell you that in order to tackle climate change and make significant progress in doing so, we have to address the need for demilitarization. It is a must. It is not a maybe or tomorrow or whatever. It is today, and it's a must. According to our friends at Conflict and Environment Observatory, the military is a huge energy user and contributes massively to climate change. The US military alone is a bigger polluter than as many as 140 countries, right? Let that sink in for a minute. Arms production and the supply chain that accompanies it consume immense amounts of fossil fuels, and the destructive aftermath of war also does not help the problem at all, right? Literally, from start to finish, this industry is one of destruction, of pillage, and of death. When you take into account mining for minerals, production, testing of weapons, and their use, there is not one stage in which the arms industry is not harmful to the planet and to its people. For world leaders to meet in Glasgow like they did, shake hands and have their kumbaya moment to, solve the climate crisis, without addressing the vital need to downsize our militaries and rethink security is frankly the biggest slap in the face. Tackling climate change is not a one-dimensional issue, as indigenous communities across the world are often the ones feeling the full impacts of climate change and the military-industrial complex. Resource wars have already become, and they will probably be the new normal when it comes to wars. All the while, Western arms companies boast about their new, awesome, eco-friendly weapons as a sign of their continued commitment to a world without a climate crisis. Like, that is just pathetic, honestly. Throughout modern history, we have seen time and time again how increased militarization has deeply affected communities across the world. And there is no more time to lose when it comes to making significant change. It starts with our governments, it starts with our militaries, and it starts here with us saying no more today. No more shall we see reports saying the British military industry produces up to 6.5 million tons of carbon dioxide. This was back in 2017. No more shall we see men, women, and children stripped of their livelihoods because the potential profit from war outweighs their human right to safety and dignity. No more shall we put profits over people, profits over our planet, and profits over humanity. No more crop failures, no more droughts, no more forest fires, loss of biodiversity, while the arms trade flourishes and gets bigger and bigger and does not get checked or scrutinized. Together, all of us, under this wonderful Manchester rain, we can still create a better world for tomorrow, and we must take action today. Thank you.
Now, we all know that young people are the ones that are going to feel the brunt of the crisis. And so it's important that young people are involved in activism, and we mean young people. Come on. We've got a little girl here who wants to say a few words. So yeah.
Hello, I'm Emma, and I want my children to have a nice life, and we need to act faster than ever.
So there you go, you're never too young to start in activism, and this just goes to show that. So let's give Emma a big hand. Okay, next up we've got Noel from Brammer to say a few words. Are you calling it Noel? There you go. Yeah, thank you everyone.
Hello everyone, my name is Noah. I am from RAPA, which is a human rights organization here in Manchester, and standing beside, I came from Zimbabwe 16 years ago, and I am still waiting for the UK Home Office to award me my status as a refugee. The ordinary people, wherever they are, cannot be expected to care for the protection of their environment without having the power as the ordinary people to control what is actually happening in their environment. As an example, in Zimbabwe, where I come from, I know that there are very many poor people. The overwhelming majority of them in the rural areas do not have any electricity. And in the towns and cities, they only get electricity twice a day. So people in search of means to cook and warm themselves in the winter turn to firewood. In towns, they buy the wood from people who go out into the country and chop down trees wherever they can find them. What this example is telling us is about the drive for profit, which breeds corruption, creates bad governments. In my country, they are using this pandemic as a weapon to suppress their people, saying all the money is going to COVID medication, but in fact they are stealing the money. My president hired a plane which cost $20,000 an hour to arrive at the COP26 in Glasgow, and he himself is looting his own country. So what is the answer? At Rapa we stand together, shoulder to shoulder in this fight with everyone who is against this hostile environment. And in particular today, we stand here shoulder to shoulder with all of you to fight against the destruction of our environment, because the continuation of destruction, climate change is not inevitable. In Rapa, we believe that with all of you coming together, organizing together and growing our solidarity, we can win this fight, not just for ourselves or each other, but for the younger generations and even those not yet born. I'm going to end by saying a luta continua, which means struggle continues. And then you say back to me, a luta. Is that okay? Yeah. A luta continua. A luta. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Noah. We have a lost phone. It has a name on it. If you can come and tell you who your name is, you can have it back. The next speaker, Naila Ashraf from Stand Up for Racism.
Hello, and what can I say? Well done for everyone that's come out on this rainy Manchester day, but what better do we expect from this city? But I do want to say this. It's really important that we have come out and that we recognise that we are part of a global movement today. There are demonstrations not just across the country but across the world, because the world knows actually that a bunch of world leaders in Glasgow are not going to save our world and our planet. We have to do that. And if there is any doubt as to why we know we can't count on the world leaders, we only have to look at what they've done over the last 2 years during COVID. This government, our government in Britain, has allowed black people and actually working class people up and down this country to die needlessly because of decisions that they made. And in fact, it is black people who have disproportionately been impacted by COVID for no reason but for the fact that they are on the front line of keeping this country going. This government goes on about attacking refugees and migrants. They talk about, the country being swamped by people trying to find, a home in Britain. Why? Because of the benefit system. No, those people are here in this country because they are part of our community and they keep this country going. That is what's clear. COVID has shown us that actually, when you look at the amount of black people, migrant workers that have lost their lives on the front line of the health service, you know who keeps this country going. It is working class people, black and white people, not the millionaires, not the leaders of the world that are gathered in Glasgow. It's people like us. And that's why we need to keep fighting on the streets. We absolutely need to be very clear that we are part of a mass movement and we can change the world. So we say in Stand Up to Racism, we recognise that actually we need to fight against wars and poverty and racism. But more than anything, we also need to recognise the dire impact that climate catastrophe is going to have. We already see millions of people fleeing their homes, trying to find safety, dying in their thousands in the Mediterranean. We'll never know how many people have lost their lives. But if the climate catastrophe continues, we will see many more millions fleeing for their lives. And we absolutely need to make sure that we leave a world behind that is safe for everybody. That means that families don't have to put their children, their young ones, their elders on a dinghy and flee in those torrential waters. This is an example of that dinghy. In fact, this is a much better example. The dinghy out in front of our stall is a much better example of the kind of thing that people put their families on. And they wouldn't do that unless they were desperate. And it is because of the war, the oppression that the leaders have created in the world, but continuing, it will be because of climate change. So we absolutely need to say it very clearly, very loudly. Refugees are welcome here. So I'm going to say this. Say it loud, say it clear. Refugees are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear. Refugees are welcome Because let's be very clear, no refugee has taken anyone's job. No refugee has taken anyone's home. No refugee has taken someone's hospital bed. This is a Tory government has taken funding out of the welfare state that has meant we see what we do. Refugees are actually part... Okay. So I just want to say, once again, let's keep fighting, let's keep to the streets, we'll build a mass movement to fight racism, but more than anything, let's build a mass movement to fight the Tories, fight the leaders that are polluting our environment. Thank you very much.
I think football can definitely play a role in tackling the climate crisis if it wants to. Next up we've got Bilal from Fight Racism and Fight Imperialism.
Ooh, a bit wet, aren't we? Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bilal from the Revolutionary Communist Group. We publish Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism. The COP conference will be a failure. It will not present solutions to address the root cause of climate change. This is because, fundamentally, it is the economic system of capitalism that is driving climate change. The capitalist, imperialist leaders who are meeting at COP do not represent the interests of the working classes, the exploited, those suffering from war and want. Instead, they represent the interests of the fossil fuel corporations, international finance capital, weapons manufacturers, massive agribusinesses, huge mining firms, and all manner of leeches and parasites who are destroying the planet for profit. Any movement against climate change has to fight against capitalism. And in the capitalist, imperialist United Kingdom, our living standards are inflated by the exploitation of land and labour in poorer nations. Products for us to consume are produced in countries where factories are powered by coal power plants. They're then shipped across the planet, which releases even more CO2. But why does this happen? This happens because living conditions in oppressed nations are suppressed, making their labour cheap and allowing imperialist corporations to rake in huge profits. Meanwhile, nations under the yoke of imperialism owe trillions in debt to imperialist nations. Zambia allocates 44% of its government revenue to creditors. Ghana spends 37% of its revenue, and Cameroon 24%. These poor nations are forced to exploit their forests, their fossil fuel reserves, to help pay this back. And their minerals are exploited by British multinationals to maximise their profit making. So this is COP26 in Glasgow. There was a COP15 in 2009 in Copenhagen. And just before it, the Africa group of countries demanded 400 billion a year to finance measures against climate change. But this was denied and it was slashed to a fraction. Bolivian President Evo Morales announced the budget of the US is $687 billion for defense, for climate change, to save life, to save humanity. They only put up £10 billion. The US military, which maintains imperialist domination of the planet, emits more CO2 than nations like Sweden, Hungary, and New Zealand, and is the world's single largest consumer of oil, the entire US military. However, an alternative conference was the World People's Conference on Climate Change in Bolivia, in Cochabamba, and attending it were over 30,000 people from 100 countries. They demanded rich countries slash carbon emissions, that 6% of their GDP be devoted to mitigating the effects of climate change, and demanding full rights to climate migrants, but they were ignored. And the conference is largely forgotten. No one is talking about Cochabamba and the anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist declaration. They declared that the capitalist system has imposed on us a logic of competition, progress, and limitless growth. This regime of production and consumption seeks profit without limits, separating human beings from nature and imposing a logic of domination upon it, transforming everything into commodities. In 2019, the Bolivian government was overthrown in a fascist coup. Why did this happen? They massacred indigenous people. Well, it's because the multinationals of the world wanted their lithium supplies. Lithium is going to be used to power electric cars. It's going to be used in the batteries of electric cars. This is what's going to happen with a Green New Deal. It's going to rely on imperialist extraction from the world. In this new energy revolution, it is cobalt, lithium, silver and copper that will replace oil, gas and coal as a new frontline of corporate destruction. The metals and minerals need to build wind turbines, solar panels and electric batteries will be ripped out of the earth so that the UK continues to enjoy lifeboat ethics, temporary sustainability to save us, but at the cost of the poor and oppressed. What is the solution? The solution is socialism. We look to the example of socialist Cuba, which has a democratically run, planned economy and is able to provide its citizens with a high standard of living and is the world's most sustainable country on the planet. It has vaccinated its own population with its own vaccine, the only country to have done so in Latin America, and this is despite being under blockade by the criminal United States government with the full cooperation of the criminal UK government for over 60 years. We need socialism, and if you want to help build, you need to join us. We need to confront the capitalist, imperialist UK state run by both the Labour and Tory parties and exploitative multinational corporations that they enable. We call on everyone to keep up the fight and come on next Saturday at 12 p.m. We need a rolling picket of the biggest UK banks which are funding hundreds of billions into climate change. 12 p.m. on Market Street, join us for a rolling picket to confront the banks and their funding of the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Bilal. Next speaker is Steve North from Salford City Unison.
I'm on 10% battery now. Sorry if the stream goes down.
Well, the first thing I want to say, I'm Steve North, I'm from Salford City Unison, and I'm also a member of Unison's National Executive Council. First thing I want to do is thank the people who've organised this event today. You know, a hell of a lot of effort, resources and time goes into making something like this happen, so thank you to those people who I know have worked really hard over the last few weeks, if not months, to bring this together. The next thing I want to do is thank those of you who are still here in the rain, well after the march is finished, to listen to people speak and offer their views on what we need to do going forward, because that's vital, isn't it? What's vital is that we go away from today and we build on what has been a really successful and a really energising march and demonstration here in Manchester today. And we've heard from various speakers about the scale of the challenge in front of us. Now, I'm a trade unionist and I'm a proud trade unionist, and I see trade unions and the labour movement having a vital role to play in tackling the climate emergency on a number of fronts. First of all, we have millions of members in this country. We remain the largest civil society institutions in this country. So it's absolutely vital that when there are demonstrations, we are at them and we are bringing our members and our activists to them. It's also vital that we are bringing our resources and channeling our resources in supporting events like this and other actions in support of tackling the climate emergency. We need to do that as trade unions. But beyond that, we also need to recognise that we have tremendous power in workplaces and in communities. And different workers have different forms of power. It's been brilliant to see banners and flags brought along today. I can see Unite flags in front of me now. People working in the private sector, working in industries that at the moment are geared up to destroy the planet, but which could be transferred and transitioned to help the planet. We've seen examples of this happen in the past, whether we talk about the Lucas plan that was developed decades ago, or other actions that have been taken by workers more recently that have said, use our skills, use our expertise, and help save the planet rather than destroy it. That is absolutely vital that we are putting that forward as trade unionists. But also unions like mine, a public service union, that has a public-facing role. We can organise in communities, we can amplify voices. Yesterday in Salford, we organised an event where we hosted young people, school children, to speak out on the importance and the vitality of acting on this. That's something we can do and will continue to do as a trade union. But I think, as one previous speaker said, there is no doubt that our actions are going to need to get more militant, that we're going to need to get more combative in what we do. That yes, our profile and our turnout is going to need to be bigger, but the actions we take are going to need to be bolder. We need to be taking direct action. For example, as a local government worker, my pension fund is invested in fossil fuels, and we're taking action increasingly against Greater Manchester Pension Fund, and that is going to need to involve action and occupations and direct challenge if they're going to actually do something to stop that from happening. But we're going to need to do more and more of that if we're going to win this. So solidarity from me as a trade unionist. Thank you for everything that you do. Let's keep fighting. We've absolutely got to win this. So solidarity, brothers and sisters, we go forwards.
Next up, we've got Maggie from Fossil Free Greater Manchester. To follow up what Steve's just said, the importance of the unions, but also the importance of all of us in making our voice heard on things we can do locally, as well as the things that need doing internationally. And I'm here to tell you that one thing that is going on in Greater Manchester that is disgusting is that the Greater Manchester Pension Fund, which holds £28 billion of our money, our workers, our pensioners, our council taxpayers' money, and they put a huge proportion of that into the fossil fuel companies, and we need that to stop. We need it to stop soon, and so what you need to do is come out on demonstrations like this, go to demonstrations that are called specifically about the pension fund, like one last Wednesday, but also keep the pressure on to our councillors. It's Tameside Council, the council for Ashton, Stalybridge, Hyde. It's that council that runs the pension fund. It's that council that is paying money to fossil fuel companies on our behalf, supporting them in their lives, in the way in which they value fossil fuels that should never be burnt. They keep valuing them and they invest our money in them, and that has got to stop. So can I call on everyone, please, to make sure that Greater Manchester's money comes out of fossil fuels? Write to your councillors, keep the pressure on, and we can win this one, but it will take all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maggie. Now, Maggie was the last of our invited speakers, so it's now open mic. If you'll want to form an orderly queue down there behind Steve, and our next speaker will introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Angela. I'm a gas engineer. They will tell you that engineers and that we're not ready to move forward. They will tell you we're the problem. We're not the problem. Engineers have families too. We care. We want to be retrained. We want investment in our sector so that we don't have to be part of the problem that is wrecking our children's future. 16 years ago, I was made redundant and I got retrained. I'd never held a drill. I was a 30-year-old woman. I didn't like heights. And I retrained as a gas engineer. And I did that because my union paid for my driving lessons with an investment fund. We had a government that paid for my college course to retrain me. We had a government that paid for my 1-year-old child to have free childcare while I retrained. Where is that support now? Stop framing us engineers as the problem. We are not the problem. We want retraining. We want the investment. Stuff you, Boris.
Thank you, everybody. I've been very moved by failure to take a grip. But I'd like to invite everybody here who's got one of these little green pieces of paper that I've been giving out this afternoon to take action today. If you've got a mobile phone, you can take it on the bus going home. If you don't want to do it now, you can use a computer. And what this is about is the fact that in our city, there are 3, and in Salford there's 1, business law firms which have not denied, and it rather looks as if they're complicit in, involvement in corporate courts. Most people have never heard of this, but it's a system by which transnational corporations can sue and bully democratic governments or councils like Manchester City Council over taking action which may impact in the future the non-existent profits of fossil fuel companies. It's called Investor State Dispute Settlement, ISDS. And it is a pernicious system which is already being used quietly to bully in Europe, but around the world. When we were fighting and defeating the TTIP campaign a few years ago, we made a lot of song and dance about it being used against food standards, animal welfare standards, workers' standards, social standards, the inability of a government like ours to take back control, to use their expression, of the NHS and public services. It's the same beast. And in this city, there is a business which hasn't had the decency to answer a civil letter in that building there, involved in it. DLA Piper. If you go down St Anne's Square and you stand looking at the back door of the Royal Exchange, on the left you'll see there's another business called Clyde. Clyde had a demonstration in Scotland about this very business a couple of months ago. If you go into Spinningfields, you'll find another organisation called Patton Boggs, and they don't deny their involvement. And if you go down to the People's History Museum and look over the river, you'll see Freshfields, perhaps the biggest rascal of them all. They don't answer. Now, I'm not calling you to go and chain yourself to their doors or superglue yourself. I'm not asking for an occupation today. That may come in the future. But I am saying that if we don't speak out, we don't get heard. And it was people speaking out that stopped the pollution of the air so we have clean city. Look at the old film Taste of Honey, which was in a letter mentioned in the Evening News. In that, the bus goes round Albert Square, and you can see how dirty this city was 60 years ago. Praise the Lord, it's not like that now, because people took action. We used to have children pushing up chimneys and down coal mines. It doesn't happen in this country, at any rate, any longer, because people took action. And if we don't speak, we don't raise the issue. So please everybody, before you go home or on your way home or when you get home, find your little green piece of paper, and if you can't find it, look up Global Justice Now on the web and take the action. Speak out, because if we don't speak out, they get away with it. And the problem is that these corporate courts are being inked in to all the trade deals that are being set up. It may not directly hit us, but it sets a new international norm. And it means that vulnerable countries, if they want to do business with us, will be bullied into accepting the norms that we have had imposed because we weren't awake. That means that countries like Zambia and Ghana, as we've heard, who are already being bullied, will be further bullied. I'm in action. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and I think that is bringing our speakers to a close. One more speaker, and then we'll be saying thank you very much to everyone. So you can introduce yourself.
Hi, Sarah. I'm in the campaign to Extracts, which is what it is a big power plant that used to burn coal, and they've changed to biomass. And forests are being cut, primary forests are being cut down in the southern US, in Canada, in Estonia, and other places where the people don't have the political clout to stop them. And so
thank you, Magga.
These trees are being turned into pellets, which creates a lot of pollution in the country of origin, and then shipped over here in vast quantities and taken by train from the port of Liverpool to Drax to burn. And this is getting subsidies. This is burning for energy and subsidised by us in our fuel bills. So I think that those subsidies should go to solar and wind. And if you agree, then look up Extracts.
Thanks for sticking around this long. Hopefully it has been an energising day and you're all going to go forward in your different campaigns, or all together like this, dealing with the climate emergency. One last announcement, someone's pointed out, there's an elephant in the room we have not mentioned. That is industrial meat. So, my party political broadcast for Greenpeace is, we are currently campaigning on Tesco, asking them to stop importing soya animal feed that is grown in what used to be the Amazon rainforest and the Cerrado savanna regions of Brazil. But don't go buying your meat from somewhere else instead, they're all as bad. Tesco is only the baddest because it's the biggest. Eat, buy, promote plant-based alternatives. And keep fossil fuels in the ground, and keep being Manchester! Let's have a big, because I'm nostalgic, let's have one final, because I'm not going to say it again, because we won. Frack off. 1, 2, 3, frack off!
I think the stream lagged there, so you might have missed the end. Just signing off. And I'm going to sign off as well. If people are able to donate, please send donations to PayPal or Subscribestar. Our money goes towards equipment, and I'll see you next time. But I think the next one's Remembrance Sunday. But if there's any others before then, please let me know and I'll go down and cover them. Yep, so bye.